Here lies less more, 4 slugs from a 44, no less, no more. Out in Arizona, just south of Tucson, where tumbleweeds tumble in search of a home, no less, no more.
On May 6, 2023, a little-known fighter from Brazil would step up on short notice and face Movsar Evloev, the number 10 ranked fighter in the division, as a plus 500 underdog. The analysts at the time didn't give Lopes much of a chance.
Evloev is going to have to slip on a banana peel to lose this fight.
The fight was a different story. It was clear from the beginning Lopes had something special. Far too often does a young fighter get a short notice opportunity and fights above their level, gets a contract, just to proceed to lose in devastating fashion. Because they couldn't hang with the top of the sport, and their performance of a lifetime was a curse in disguise. Lopes, on the other hand, was able to rock Movsar, put him in dangerous submissions, and never give up on himself. But for as many moments Diego had, it was clear he had many technical deficiencies. Movsar was able to control him for half the fight and landed 5 times as many strikes. Movsar was a professional and showed a clear ability to work through the fight and stay composed. John Attic would describe Lopes as a bat out of hell.
Lopes coming out like a bat out of hell.
Which, considering what we know from Lopes, is as accurate as calling John Jones gay. In addition, looking at what we don't know about Lopes, the idea of Lopes being a bat escaping a hell-like environment is the story of his life. Diego Lopes da Silva was born in Manaus, Brazil, to a loving family where BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, was a tradition. He started competing at 7 in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For as much love as the Lopes family could give him, money was far more short. Stuck between a struggling student or becoming a worker slaving away for pennies, Lopes decided to bet on himself. His brother was already an MMA fighter, and Lopes was in his camp helping him prepare when his older brother was offered a fight. Feeling sorry for his opponent's lack of experience, he decided not to take it, rather asking Diego if he wanted it. Lopes at this time had 0 MMA experience and just had pure BJJ. Diego would proceed to win his first MMA match. From there, Lopes would be offered to be a teacher and instructor in Mexico. Young Diego didn't even know what the fuck a Mexico is. Nonetheless, what language they spoke, where they were, what the culture was, anything at all. Lopes would still make the jump. But in this, and leaving Brazil, his family, his friends, Lopes made the ultimate choice in life. Escaping his poor upbringing with little success in school, and the alternative of slaving away at a fucking gas station, Lopes, like a bat out of hell, would decide to go to the Wild West in pursuit of being a champion. Following his fight of the night loss to Movsar Evloev, Lopes, having received his show money, win money, and $50K on top of that.
Fight of the night was Movsar versus Lopes, and performance of the night went to Yana Frivola. They all won $50,000.
He's getting a taste of the big bucks. But now was the time for him to prove himself, which he did 3 months later, wasting no time at all against Gavin Tucker. Now, for as well as Diego had been doing thus far, he'd very quickly get a reality check. Not even a minute into the fight, he would receive a roundhouse kick to the fucking ballsack. Something that will destroy the ego of any man, if at least momentarily. Following this, Lopes, after getting taken down with a single leg, mid-air would triangle Gavin into a rolling armbar. Truly elite stuff. Getting another $50K, Lopes was making more money than most doctors in less than 20 minutes of fight. This mullet-having, gun-slinging, Mexican-Brazilian savage would go on a street fight finish streak, only taking Dan Ige on 4 hours' notice, up a weight class to a decision win. Lopes was here to stay and made more momentum in the division in a year than some fighters do in their whole career. Say what you want about Brazilian fighters, but they know how to run through a division. They just seem to have a natural underdog appeal. Combined with pure fucking firepower, you can't help but root for them. But now was the first big test for Lopes. After beating the gatekeepers and lower level fighters in his division in devastating fashion, we got to see if Lopes was just some can-crushing finisher who can't win against the elite, or if he was made for gold. And against Brian Ortega, we have to wait long to see if he belonged. Comparing Lopes in this fight to when he fought Movsar shows a maturity in the game. Lopes, after dropping Ortega, focused on position, staying patient, and didn't do anything to jeopardize the fight, landing devastating calf kicks that made Ortega grow a tit that make Manel Cap and Izzy jealous. Patient execution of deadly techniques. Diego Lopes is an assassin, with 2 guns on his waist and an iron on the head of an Aussie legend. Seven months later, Miami, Florida, headlining Vice City. There was a lot of emotion going into this fight. Volkanovski was saying unspeakable things about Lopes, crossing so many lines he made Francis Ngannou look like he went on a hike.
Do you still believe it's the worst hair in the UFC?
I don't think it was unkind words, I was just saying that, you had the mullet at the back and then at the front, it was just a whole different vibe. I started getting the, "'Cause tonight will be the night that I will fall for you over again. Don't make me change my mind. I won't live to see another day. I swear."
On a serious note, there was a lot of respect on both sides. For Ilya having left the division to slime out, another fan favorite.
He's getting smashed! Please, Charles! Bryce Mitchell absorbed the time.
This fight had an air of the passing of the torch. Volk having been on the receiving end of back-to-back KOs and Diego being on a killing spree through the division. In reality, this fight was similar to the Movsar fight for Lopes. Now facing the greatest man to ever fight at 145, he'd be stuck behind Volk, forced to play catch-up, where Volk took the fight to Lopes with blitzing shots, great use of distance, kicks, and smart takedowns when needed. With that being said, like the Movsar fight, Lopes was able to leave his moments, rocking and dropping the greatest Australian of all time and finding the will of fire to push forward and put some fucking mustard on Volk. Overall 3-2 decision for Volk, where for the majority of the fight he controlled range and decided where the fight went with the hiccups along the way. Volk was back on top of the division, where Lopes, having had been in literal arm reach of the belt, was sent back into the wild to hunt again for another chance of greatness. You can just tell Diego was someone who wears his heart on his sleeve, with interactions like him and Yair Rodriguez.
You guys even better fight me. Is that what you want to fight me? What's going on?
Allegedly, Yair's team had one of Lopes' training partners in the gym, and they beat the shit out of him. This story isn't very clear, but when this got back to Diego, it was clear it was very personal. Someone like Diego knows the value of friends and family. Having to leave them in the pursuit of a dream, I can imagine it's the same for a lot of his training partners.
Não tenho ninguém, sabe? Eu daria tudo pra sair do octógono nunca vitória e poder abraçar minha mãe, meu pai, mas não vou poder.
Lopes is fueled by fire, and after the fight, footage of him in the locker room is hard to see. Stuck, staring at himself in the mirror, wondering what went wrong, how he let down his family, that he wasted his only chance. Diego was clearly someone who leads by example. After his fight against Ortega, he immediately got ready to help Alexa Grasso in her fight. I'm sure even if Diego was knocked out cold, he would somehow show up. That's just who Lopes is. But now having lost to Volk and coming home empty-handed, Diego would need to get back on track. And who better to do that against than the loudest dog in the yard? Jean Silva had similar expectations placed on him, having similarly ran through the division. Being part of the Fighting Nerds, and who are almost a Ninja Turtle style of wacky characters with some of the most savage highlights in the sport, who almost like a fucking anime had been losing one by one, with only one left standing. Lopes carrying 2 countries on his back, and the expectations of gold versus the fellow countryman who needs to restore the honor of his team. A showdown of the West versus the East, with Lopes the established #1 contender versus the rising star, which true to their nature was a shootout, with Lopes staying in the mid-range, popping Lopes' head back, with Lopes struggling to find his shots, using kicks to land damage until Lopes, capitalizing on Silva's spinning back kick, picked him up and slammed the fuck out of his little ass, carving his head like a pumpkin. For as many highlights Lopes has on the feet, it's easy to forget how good he is on the ground. Ending the round as a clear winner, some give him a 10-8. Silva, coming into the second, was reckless, going for big, spamming kicks and elbows where Lopes, in response to the tornado, instead of weathering the storm, simply decided to cut it in half. With a spinning elbow of his own that's brutal enough to make Yuri cry. Absolutely fucking savage. Diego sliced Silva's eye open, cementing his spot as 1 of 1. That cage wasn't big enough for the both of them. In an era of undeserved title shots, Diego Lopes can fall into that narrative. With only 2 wins in the top 10 and 0 in the top 5, even with an impressive performance like that against Silva, it's hard to argue against him against Evloev, who has 2 top 5 wins, one of which being Lopes, and an undefeated record with a 9-fight win streak in the UFC. Or even someone like Lerone Murphy, potentially. But to me, the reason why Diego got the title shot over the other fighters in the division is most likely due to more than just his win over Silva. Evloev is very inactive and is pulled out of multiple fights. Lerone, yes, had a big win over Aaron Pico, but besides looking like Pedro Pascal, Pico isn't a proven fighter by any means. And besides his wins over Josh Emmett and Dan Ige, he doesn't really have too much that cuts it nowadays. I'm not saying Diego is the clear #1 contender, but the other fighters in divisions aren't doing themselves any favors. Diego Lopes was dealt a hand that for many would amount to nothing more than just another cog in the machine. A tale as old as time, Lopes would take what little he had and take the UFC head on in a past filled with blood, tears, and fire. Lopes, now having a second shot at gold in Alexander Volkanovski's backyard, has a chance to prove not only to his team, his family, but to himself that he's made for gold and to be a champion. No less, no more.